Okay, so so far we looked at three different measures. We looked at head count, we looked at depth, and then we looked at how you can square the depth to make severity. So now I want to show you then this index that they show in the textbook. I just want to go through it so you can kind of understand it in that can actually capture all three of them. Now, couple of warnings. One, this index on its face looks really bad. Okay, so don't get scared. Two is I don't really want to emphasize this kind of stuff. Okay, that's what the name of this index is. I don't really want to emphasize this kind of stuff by putting a huge weight on it, but I also don't want to just skip over everything that's a little bit technical. We are going to do this, but it's not going to be very emphasized. So what does that mean? That means I'll give you a chance to practice it. And again, in a couple of weeks, we're going to do some more practice with some indexes. We can use Excel, and I think it'll try to kind of help you build some, hopefully help people build some skills regarding processing data. But at the same time, I'm not going to emphasize it in the sense that I'm going to make a big weight of it on any exam or anything like that. So yeah, I might ask a question about it, but I'm not going to ask tons of questions about these technical mathy kind of topics. But they're kind of important, and I think you will see these things in the future. Okay, so this video, the purpose of this video is to derive how do we use this to do the other three indexes. Okay, that's the purpose of it. If you have read the textbook part and it makes perfect sense to you, you could probably skip this. All right, so let's look at how we use it to get the three indexes. So what we do is we're going to change this alpha, right? So we're going to use alpha, and if we make it 0, 1, or 2, it's going to give us the something related to those three indexes. So the first one, if we make alpha equals to 0, okay, so we're going to do it. This index for alpha equal to 0. So let's do it. Again, I'm deriving this. I'm not going to require you to do this, but this will help you understand what's happening. Okay, and this is, again, we're doing this for all the people in poverty. So there's Q people in poverty. Q is just a number. And then we have this gap. This is the index as it's written. Okay, if you remember back to your math classes, what is something raised to the 0 power? So something raised to the 0 power, so a to the 0 is just 1. Anything raised to the 0 power is just 1. Okay, so a lot of the stuff's going to disappear. So the z is going to disappear, and all this stuff is going to disappear and just become 1. Okay, and then we're going to add 1 q times. So that means it's going to be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 for however many people are in poverty. Okay, so so this is just going to be as q over n. Okay, so that is our head count index. And a good thing about this index in general, the Foster-Greer-Thorbecke index, it ranges from 0 to 1. Okay, if it's at 0, there's no poverty. If it's at 1, so in this case, 0 is no poverty, and no one's below the poverty line. Okay, and 1 is all below. Everyone's below z. Okay, so that's what it tells us. And so this is no different than what we did before. There's really no need to use this thing to find the head count index. So again, this is our head count. You can just use the head count index directly from the basic idea that you understand. Okay, so the more useful thing to use this for is when we have the situation of when we make alpha equal to 1. So make alpha equal to 1, so this index, just to indicate this is for equal to 1, then it's going to become like this, oops, n over z to the 1, and then q, and that's z minus y I to the 1. Okay, so what is something raised to the 1 power? Well, it's just itself. Okay, so this becomes 1 over nz, okay, and then this becomes to q, and then z minus yi. So the part here is the thing we talked about earlier. This is the total depth, right? If we, I think they called it, I think your textbook might call it like the total poverty gap or something like that. Anyways, this is the total poverty gap is what they call it. And it's what we were calling depth earlier. Okay, and then so then the question is, well, what's this part? What does this thing mean? Well, this is this is if everyone had zero income. So that's theoretically as bad as it could get. Okay, so if everyone had, if you have 100 people and no one has any income, and your Z is 30, well then that would be everyone is 30 below the poverty line, and there's 100 of them, so that would be 30 times 100, right? So Z, remember, is your poverty line, and big N is your population, and so this is as bad as it gets. All right. So what's the range going to? So this again is our depth measure, or our poverty gap measure. And so this is going to kind of show, well, how far are we from as bad as it could get? So again, it's going to have a range. The range of this thing is 0 to 1. So 1 would be no one's in poverty. And instead of this being 0, sorry, is no one in poverty. And instead of 1 being everyone is in poverty, it's worse than that. 1 in this case is everyone's income is 0. Let's say it that way. Everyone's income equal to 0. Okay, so that's bad. That's as bad as it can get. Okay, and so this, you can interpret this as sort of like an average depth. That's kind of what it becomes. It's not just a depth, it's kind of like an average depth or average poverty gap, okay, because it's being divided by the total. So that's the second one. And then finally, I'll move on to the third one. So the third one is this severity, right? And so when we put this as to be 2, remember the squaring it just puts emphasis on the big values, the ones who are far away. So that's N over Z squared, Q, Z minus somebody's income squared, okay? So this part, as we saw it before, this is the sum, all the severity added up. And then this part is, this is the severity if everyone, or you can say if no one has income, or everyone has 0 income. That's the severity. So we're comparing to the worst situation possible. And so again, the interpretation is much the same. So this is sort of like an average severity to some extent, because we're kind of, or how far away are we from the worst possible is kind of a way to interpret it. And so it again ranges from 0 to 1. So 0 is no one in poverty, and 1 would be everyone has 0 income. So not only our depth is big, but our severity is big. The depth and severity won't be, the poverty gap and severity won't be the same numbers, but they will tend to move in the same direction. Okay, so that's how this relates to those three. It looks complicated. Actually calculating it is not that bad. So in the next video, I'm going to do a short calculation exercise, and then after that, I will into this week's quiz, I will have you do one practice calculation as well to make sure that it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense from the quiz, if I can tell it doesn't make sense, then I will find some other way to add on to this.